Good evening. Okay. Good evening and welcome to this webinar organized by Biomimicry Switzerland. My name is Sonja Donau-Adams, and on behalf of our association, I'm happy to welcome you all. Also welcome to Edwin, a former webinar guest who is so kind and handles all the technical aspects behind the scenes. Biomimicry Switzerland is back with the second webinar of the new series that will accompany us into winter and with a new, shorter and more interactive format. We wish to bring biomimicry, its principles and applications closer to the wider public and raise awareness about these great lands for tackling all types of challenges we face today, be they technical, social or global. Oh, there are more people waiting. Edwin, can you let them in?
Yes.
Then I concentrate on the introduction. Tonight, we welcome Hélène Tiberios. She is currently the CEO of Rain Ions and has a global vision merging technology, business, and innovation. She shared her expertise as a distinguished speaker in green technology and climate change at global technology symposiums and business conferences. But today, she is all ours and introduces us how using nature can remove carbon dioxide and air pollution. Before I pass it on to Hélène, a few housekeeping rules. Hélène will lead us through her presentation for the first 20 minutes. Please feel free to post your questions in the chat in the meantime. Hélène will answer them in due time. The second part of this webinar is devoted to interactions and Q&A. Do not be shy, unmute yourself and go for it. Interactivity is what we are going for. Hélène, it is time for you to take over and lead us into tonight's webinar. Please take over from here and please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Sonja. Pleasure to have everybody this evening or this morning for me, or depending on your time zone. Let me share the screen for the presentation for today. So thanks everyone. So the topic for today is going to be the use of biomimicry for practical applications, specifically for climate, and how to use nature to simply remove CO2 and air pollution. So a little bit about myself. I just share with some of you, I have a pretty strong technology background, 20 plus years in corporation working in technology, understanding technology challenges, innovation at scale, what it takes to adopt and scale a solution. 6 years ago, personal choice, I decided to make a decision to look more specifically into green technology. And I created a consulting firm, We Grow Green Tech, to help scale green technology and nature-based science align with United Nations Sustainable Goal. My background being initially more on the digital side, I work with a huge amount of startups to acquire a solid hands-on expertise in climate change, green technology, and biomimicry. So the last few years, I really focus more on how to use that biomimicry innovation and to be able to scale it successfully, to make it a successful business case. So if you look why we grow green tech, why so many of us are starting to look at solutions. So today we had a crucial path, right? Are we going to have a sustainable future or a path to destruction based on the behavior and consumption pattern that we have established? So the key deliverable that everybody is starting to realize in the last 3 years is new business solution must be scaled in terms of green innovation, blue innovation. So blue, some of you may have heard the term blue economy. That's technology innovation more pertinent to ocean, really associated to regenerative technology, anything that's pertinent to building an economy around ocean, and of course, climate technology. So to share with you what I've observed in the last few years, having worked intensively with many startups in that space, there's in general, right, for some of you that are in that space, for a technology startup, most startups fail. Right, it's like 85 to 90% of startups are going to fail. And the key aspect in the maturation of a startup is actually the traction time. When you come up from a seed idea, Like, for example, you take biomimicry, a lot of exciting innovation. I came across very exciting innovation in the last 6 years. When you go from product to market and scale, that's a really critical phase. And most startups fail, not because they don't have a good technology, but because during the traction phase, it's like planting a seed, right? You need to mature the seed, you need to bring in enough resource. You have only so much time before it grows. So you can make a similar parallel with the challenge faced by this startup. And a few years ago, it was even more pronounced for everything associated with green, climate tech, biomimicry startup, because for investors, it was very hard to connect back then. What we're seeing recently is more and more emphasis of nature-based science, a realization that technologies that we have scaled, digital technology, don't have an answer don't have the full answer for the challenges we face today. And we have to go back to nature-based science and biomimicry approach. So the solution for today, if you're looking at specifically building solution for a better future, there is what I use, the triple bottom line. We have entered first it has to be simple. We have entered an era where everything is complicated, where we have depleted resources, where corporations have only so much freedom, when consumers are going to be limited in their choice to evolve, adopt new solution. The second one, sustainability. Having worked in the startup phase, I've very often observed companies that are looking only at growth, right? Financial growth, lacking sustainability as a parameter. And I think we have entered an era where we can't afford to think without a sustainability component in any type of development. And the last one is scalable. This is key to any startup. It has to be scalable, right? Because there's still a concept of growth that needs to attract investors. And that's what I think sometimes if you look at biomimicry solution, in the past, a lot of solutions were exciting in terms of innovation, but they did not necessarily present the scalability factor, making it very challenging to attract funds and to scale as a result. So that's kind of the three main lines. And what's interesting about biomimicry is that biomimicry can offer those three parameters. And I think if you start positioning that to investors that are not, or corporations that are not very familiar with biomimicry, that still see biomimicry as a beautiful concept, but not very practical, they start kind of evolving in the way they see this type of innovation. So, you know, I'm sure all of you in this room know about biomimicry. What I was trying to do here is present biomimicry in a nutshell, leveraging this beautiful picture that I love about Romanesco. That's about show you the fresco, kind of show one application of biomimicry. So to simplify on the business side, if you take biomimicry and you try to apply that to business concept, there is usually, you can characterize biomimicry at three levels. First one, form. Second one, behavior. Third one, ecosystem. So I'm going to be focusing in today's presentation about the first two aspects. So if we focus on form, the level of biomimicry corresponding to form, everybody knows about Velcro, which is one of the most successful example in adoption of biomimicry. So that would be a physical form of bird and furs that exist in nature that we were able to successfully duplicate. An example of behavior would be, for example, the heating and ventilation that were developed in building that was inspired by termite. So these two concepts, the ecosystem is a little more complex, so I won't touch it in today's presentation because it's involving developing larger ecosystem. For the sake of simplicity in the presentation applied to business, I will focus on form and behavior. So now let's go back into what I was mentioning here, the key aspect of solution that we need to see today to be able to successfully scale any type of innovation. Well, let's apply that to biomimicry-based innovation. Why is it simple? Well, biomimicry derived from nature. So quite often, because it's derived from nature, it makes it what I call an autonomous system. And being an autonomous system is key, because if you have a self-induced reaction or things that actually fundamentally working in a simple way, the cost is going to be much lesser. The implementation is going to be much easier. And you're going to be able to attract corporations where they're all looking at simple solution, low tech, low cost. And biomimicry, because it's relying on already existing mechanism, can provide this simplicity. I'm going to present in some business case some of this simplicity approach, so it makes more sense for the audience on a practical case. But the first aspect of simplicity of a solution can already be met by biomimicry principle. The second one is sustainable, right? You want a solution that provides some type of improvement to a corporation. Very often they need to see at least 30 or 40% improvement before they adapt any type of new innovation. But it also has to be sustainable. We can't, as I say, we can't afford in today's world to push solutions that are not sustainable. It just based on where we are, based on what the United Nations has identified in terms of sustainable goal, the solution has to be sustainable. And what's interesting with biomimicry in sustainability is quite often the innovation that you find is going to be associated with a circular model. As such, in terms of long-lasting financial effect, you're going to have an advantage and an edge compared to other companies that are not thinking about this. For example, bigger picture, think about the increasing price of commodities that we took for granted in the past, like water, for example, material, right? Material is starting to be scarce. The price of material is going to the roof. Water price is starting to rise. Everything is going to be reflecting of the cost of a solution. If you don't have a sustainable and circular model mindset, in a medium to long term, you're not going to be able to offer something that's that could be scaled and that could be profitable for any type of corporation. And the other aspect of sustainability, very often associated to biomimicry innovation, is you have very little to no negative effect. By introducing new innovation, you're not creating additional problem that you may have to counteract in a medium to long-term horizon. And the last one is scalability. So as you're going to see, for some of the type of biomimicry innovation that we're looking at, for example, the form of the process, very often those design concepts are universal. It means that the concept could be reused to different sectors and industry. So if you associated simplicity of the solution, scalability, causing less friction for consumer to adopt, lower cost, you actually got a very good potential for biomimicry-based innovation to scale. Because here, I think at this point, how do you connect the business world to biomimicry innovation, right? And how do you create a pipeline for biomimicry innovation to be adopted in a business environment? Because that's one way to promote biomimicry innovation, is by making it simple, affordable, sustainable, and scalable. So now that I've presented those pretty simple, the simple concept associated to business, what I learned over the years when I looked at different type of business innovation, I look at specific parameters, I came across very many times. I looked at biomimicry innovation. I'm fascinated. And I think, oh, it's so interesting, so exciting in terms of science. But when you put your business hat and you start thinking, is it something that could be scaled? Not every biomimicry innovation is interesting in terms of scaling. And I think because we're in a very exciting phase where people are starting to look more into nature-based science, there's huge opportunity for biomimicry innovation. But you have to kind of maybe look at it also in the term of business, not only science. So the company that I've currently restructured in the last 2 years, the main one is called RainIon. RainIon is a very interesting concept, biomimicry-driven science that applied to climate. And that's also a very interesting business case because it can be scaled. So I'm going to talk, Helicoid is another type of industry. So RainIon is more about processes. Helicoid and breathal is more about form, design, kind of creating new structures that are more efficient. Rhenium is about using a biomimicry process to tackle climate technology. So if you look at Rhenium, that's a biomimicry-based solution that's entirely focusing on CO2 and air pollution. The key advantage of this technology is because you're using nature, that you work at the exhaust and you work at as a direct air capture at existing air and CO2 already present in the air. You can really, you can solve the CO2 and air pollution today. You can start eliminating CO2 and air pollution. So to give you an example, I don't know, many of you are in this space, so I'm just gonna present a few metrics. There's a huge amount of exhaust currently being emitted by both small and large systems. So there are existing innovation, right? That's based on electrification, hydrogen, renewable energy. All of this innovation is starting to be scaled, have received a huge amount of investment. The challenge with this innovation, it's like it's medium to long term. It presents some risk in terms of, depending on your geographic zone, customer adoption, in the supply chain, material availability, right? Some of the material used either in electrification or solar panel or wind turbine may get depleted quickly, causing costs to rise, and maybe endangering adoption. So clearly, if you look at the climate technology in itself, the climate ecosystem economy, you need to start thinking about a bigger picture, about also bringing technologies that could potentially create a circular model, regenerative model around the challenge that we have today. So that's where Rhenium become this biomimicry-based solution is starting to be very interesting. Think about the concept of CO2 and air pollution at the molecular level. If you find a way naturally to transform this pollutant, you can actually starting addressing the problem of climate, not only CO2, but also air pollution as of today, because you're actually tackling the pollution being emitted from the exhaust and also the pollution already in the air that needs to be removed, CO2 and air pollutants. So now, to kind of dive down more in a science base, the way it works, we're actually using biomimicry process. We're using a material that's, so for some of you that are familiar, that are either expert in material science or chemistry, so there's some mineral naturally available on Earth called piezo and pyroelectric material. Tourmaline, for example, has received a lot of research, a lot of natural science research around the properties of this mineral. So these minerals are very interesting in terms of science because they have the capability to emit negative ions when submitted to heat and pressure. When you coat the inside of an exhaust system with this mineral, you naturally are going to have heat and pressure. So you're creating a natural system when you have heat, pressure, the material. So there's a natural negative ion processes that is triggered. The fact that you're bombarding all these molecules, this dirty exhaust that includes CO2, NOx, PM emission, whatever air pollutant molecules that have been identified that are present in the exhaust, start to react with this negative ion. That triggers a self-induced ionization that causes this component to be transformed into a clean exhaust. So this is a very exciting example of biomimicry process innovation that is becoming a really exciting business case. We have a huge opportunity, clean the air, remove CO2. Think about if you can find a solution that is inspired by nature to remove the problem that we have created as humans. because it's inspired by nature, because it's derived from natural processes, you don't need any external source of energy, right? Because the system, this is a self-induced reaction there. You use a material that's naturally available on Earth that is fully scalable, because these materials are available in multiple locations on Earth. They're also available at the surface, so you're not creating a lot of challenges mining, and you're capable of tackling, of resolving today the problem caused by older infrastructure. So it makes it a very novel and exciting approach, because it's enabling you at low cost, low tech, to resolve a huge problem. And I think this, from a business standpoint, I think if you start following me there, you have the three aspects. It's simple. So as a result, it's low cost. It's sustainable, because you're actually removing CO2 and air pollution with material that are available, minerals that are not known to create any negative side effect. And it's scalable, because we have a large amount of material available. And from a business standpoint, it makes it low cost. It makes it very potential quick adoption, right? Because you don't have to change an entire supply chain. You don't have to build new infrastructure. You can just work on existing infrastructure and remove the air pollution and CO2 at that level. Here quickly, right, just to show you some of the prototype that we built using this concept, using this biomimicry driven concept. We actually got some really nice effectiveness to remove not only CO2, but other pollutants like NOx. For some of you, is a pretty toxic air pollutant, very, very efficient on NOx. The same technology will be applied to a direct air capture system, same biomimicry based concept, to actually remove, capture air pollution and CO2 already present in the air. Because that's, if for some of you that are interested in climate, is these two components. There's how do we remove air pollution and CO2 that we're currently producing, and the one that we already have produced. So here it's an exciting angle, because as I say, very often biomimicry, if they into form or process are universal, could be adopted in multiple industry. So that's the case that you have here. Now, another example that another companies that I work with successfully. This one is another case of biomimicry based example. This is more coming from the form by looking at an existing, like the shrimp was found to have a structure almost indestructible. When she's being under attack, when the shrimp, she or he, right? I don't know, the shrimp is being under attack, it actually creates a shell that's almost indestructible. And when researchers try to understand why, it was because of fibers alignment. The fiber in the shell aligned in a specific configuration would cause the shell to become almost indestructible. So when you think about, for some of you, the concept of composite material that are used everywhere in the world, that in terms of a circular model are causing a very big problem. Like, for example, aviation, large infrastructure are all using composite material. By using a different alignment, similar to what the shrimp is using, you actually cause the structure to become much more resilient. As such, you can reduce the weight by something like up to 40% with the same resistance. So that makes it very interesting for large structure relying on composite material, because you can reduce the consumption, right? Because you reduce the weight, it makes your vehicle lighter, and as a result, you're gonna produce less CO2 or less pollution associated with this specific vehicle. So that's a concept that's also very interesting in the term of climate, because you make your material, you're using way less material, and you have for the same resistance to impact. Another concept too is Brayfall. It's a company based in South Africa, which have developed a unique blade structure. They started with wind turbine, but they're going to be expanded to a different type of industry that is actually morphing with the environment. And in the case of wind turbine, that's really interesting, because this biomimicry derived technology not only make wind turbine way more efficient using less material, but regarding one challenge of wind turbine has always been bird, like the fact that it's causing a problem with biodiversity. So the specific biomimicry design could alleviate the problem. Again, another system where you can, everything go back to business, right? Can you scale this technology? Is there a cost improvement? Yes. Is it simple? Yes. Is it scalable? Yes. Is it sustainable? Yes. So all the parameters, right, for this free technology are being met. And I think this, as a result, having make biomimicry innovation really like an interesting case for anything that relate to climate in the case of business setting, because everything relating to climate about business is linked to scaling, right? If you want to start having a large impact, it needs to be scaled. And so I think that's the free, that concludes my talk. Thank you very much for your attention. And I'm open to any question you may have regarding those either free application or the biomimicry innovation applied to business in the context of climate.
Thank you very much, Hélène. It was very interesting, really inspiring. I hope the air pollution, pollution and carbon dioxide will be scalable and will make it.
Well, you know what's really exciting is I presented this few innovation that I've worked with, but I came across so many more innovation. I think there is really exciting innovation happening in that space. And what I think is very encouraging is both innovation and mindset are changing. People are really looking at something long-term, sustainable, nature-based, how to work in synergy, in regenerative way with nature, rather than trying to force something that may break within 5 to 10 years.
Mm-hmm. And there is one question from the chat. Micheli Hernandez asks, can rain ions use heat from air conditioners to clean air?
Really? Yeah, it's actually a very good question. So right now we're going to be looking at the obvious source of pollution. The prototype is for generators. So if you look generators, it's really interesting what's happening in the world. We're pushing renewable energy, but they still heavily depending on generator. So generators are used all over the places. We're starting to, some geographic locations are trying to remove the dependency of generators, but it's going to take a long time. Some others like India or South America strongly relying on generators. And if you look at the pollution created by generators, not only CO2, but other very toxic pollutants, that's a big part of the problem. Building, as Micheline is referring to, is also a very interesting application because yes, indeed, you could use that associated with heating. And in the context of even smaller business case, you could use this solution because you just cut the inside of an exhaust or a solution. If you have heat, you need a little bit of moisture, which in most cases is applicable all over in the world. And if you have heat and pressure, specifically with heat, that's when the material really starts to be efficient. So no, it's a very good question.
So if I get you right, the material starts to be more efficient with more heat, also with more pressure?
Correct. So this specific material, as we're using today, the sweet spot is with higher temperature, which I think is great because if you start looking into refineries, cement factories, like you have a big smokestack, those are like higher temperature, where we have the sweet spot for the technology. But the concept is using pyro and piezoelectric material. So we already have developed in terms of research, and the patent has been covered in that regard, the usage of other material that will have another temperature profile. In our first case, we use tourmaline. So if you look at tourmaline, Edwin, like you start emitting negative ions like this, and then you have an inflection point, and then boom, you really have like an exponential effect. But other material don't necessarily have the same profile. So depending on the business case that you have, you can optimize the material to have a different profile as a function of temperature.
Well, that indeed answers one of my questions. Are there differences between, for instance, diesel, gasoline, or LPG? But if it is the case, how about jet engines? They are very hot, they have a lot of pressure, and they pollute a lot.
So very interesting again, because I was like you, I was thinking the material as of today can go up to 925 Fahrenheit. After that, right, you start degrading the material. And if you degrade the material, you lose the properties. But what's interesting in the context of the airplane, so I went to Toulouse where Airbus is. I was visiting Airbus. And my perception was like you, that the exhaust was probably going to be too hot for these large jets. But what's interesting is that according to what they told me, if you look at the exhaust of jet, they build different chamber. So if you are far enough and the temperature is in a sweet range, you can actually start potentially using the same concept. And the same thing apply with tanker, smokestack, like cement factory. Very interesting, cement factory. It's one of the leading cause of CO2 and pollution. So cement factories have already have put filters at the exhaust to capture some of the most pollutant air pollutant, but they're not doing anything for CO2. But if you place it far enough, right, when you have the right temperature suite, then I think it's all a matter of using the operating range for your material, respecting your material, and find the coating and have the right coating technology.
Okay, now I've got one more question, then we'll switch over to the chat again. Perhaps a bit of a question of conscience. What would you prefer, getting the new cars fitted with the material, the new car exhaust, or retrofit all the old cars?
I think personally, because I work so much in climate, there is a reality maybe that people are not really grasping, is that the innovation that we're pushing is either not mature enough, or it's going to take a long time to scale in some geography. You look at electrification for Europe, smaller defense, charging station, but think about the material we need. Very quickly, like charging station, to have enough material to build all those charging stations in the world, we don't have enough. Same thing about, as of today, the battery is a big problem. You see the price of lithium going up. That's going to cause the price of an electric car to go up. So what I'm just saying here is that this is the right path moving forward, but it has a lot of challenges. And at some point we may get stuck. And it's not like we have a lot of time to resolve this problem. We have a very small windows, and we have more and more climate disasters. We have wars. We have so many geopolitical problems happening. We have to think just not like this, but like this. How do we push new innovation while creating circular model in the same range? Because everything associated with solar panel, they're going to have to be recycled. Wind turbine, they're going to have to be recycled. Are we going to have enough material to do that in the long run? With the increase of energy that we see with people consumption of data, right? And then air conditioning and so on. So the reality is we all want to be carbon neutral. And to be carbon neutral, you need not only to push new innovation, but you need to retrofit what we have. If we can make a dent in all the infrastructure, and by reducing the impact that they have today, we need time as far as implementing new infrastructure for a better future. So people start understanding the concept of transition technology. And that's the way I position RenIon, or we position RenIon, is as a transition technology where we're enabling the transition. We derail the risk associated with all this new technology. Because hydrogen, same thing. Did you know that hydrogen has some leakage problem in a lot of cases when it's low cost? All of this will have to be addressed, and it's going to take time. It's going to take it's going to investment. We live in a complicated world today, so I think we need to address, we need to be wise about opening portfolio. And so I see, for example, this technology. We're starting with energy, but we have a prototype that is going to be developed for cars.
Okay.
And the goal is not to compete with electric car at all. But when you look at the average age of a car, 12 years in the US, I think it's 13 or 14 in Europe. people are going to keep their car for a long time. And if in an economy where people are going to be struggling because they don't have enough money, they're not going to buy a new car. So if there's anything we can do, meanwhile, as you know, as we kind of push newer technology, is to minimize the impact of the existing one. And that's the same thing when you go to other location, other geography, where, yeah, you read in the news that there is big thing happening, but when you really study the adoption, some geography are still very far behind, and it's going to take a while to kind of merge them to carbon neutral innovation.
All right. Well, that was a long answer to my question. So yeah, can you ask the questions in the chat, and I'll switch on the light here because I'm now start to be a bit Halloweenish.
Yeah, sure. One was about Faisal asked, Germany is very far ahead in this kind of research. What can developed or developing nations learn from Germany? He asks us.
You know, so it's for like, is it for climate specifically, or is it for rain ion?
He didn't specify. Faisal, maybe you want to speak directly with us? No. Then I have another question in between. You spoke about with the problems we have all over the world. Do you apply biomimicry approaches in the organization too, this, in the systems, not only in the technical aspects? That would be interesting to me.
I think I'm working on a different project. It's actually to create a local pole of innovation where we will apply better processes, a little more on the ecosystem side, right? Because the ecosystem is the most complicated to develop because it involves multiple elements. Business side, we can talk about simple principle, which is form and content, because business metrics, I mean, is your concept. In a concept of ecosystem, I think it's really like a long-term vision, because everything has to shift, right? Everything has to, you have to start thinking the way people think, from investors, shareholder, corporation. And I humbly feel like the way to do it is to start building small kind of good success story with business. When you promote right innovation, the people have the right mindset, and then you can start promoting, an investor can see, this is a great technology, this is sustainable, there's growth, it's practical. And then you start, and same thing with corporation, they're going to be looking more and more into this type of technology because they understand there is tremendous value there. And so I don't really have an answer for you, Sonja. I think what I've been working on the business side, and now on the more like an innovation pole, trying to bring people together, create an ecosystem in NorCal that will use more and more biomimicry innovation, is trying to use this concept at the more advanced level. But we haven't really built a practical case yet.
Yeah, it needs a mindset shift, I think.
And at so many levels. And especially, I think, because Switzerland, Europe, I think this country are way more community-centric, nature, they're more connected to nature, so there's a mindset there that's quicker to evolve. I think the US is going to take a little, depending on where we are, right, the culture and the education, it may take longer to evolve.
So is there another question in the chat? I can't find another one. Is there another question coming up, or are you all good?
Or if anybody wants to ask me directly, more than happy.
Yeah, just go for it. Just unmute yourself and ask Hélène directly. It would be nice to have a fresh face.
A voice.
A voice, or without picture, a fresh voice.
Yeah, I would like to, I actually mentioned graphene production also produces intense heat and pressure. So maybe like if we could add that rain ion technology in the production. You had mentioned as one option, other industrial.
Oh, for sure. And you know, if you want to send me more email, like I put my email in the last page. I'm always I'm always happy to discuss people as far as the business avenue innovation. So if you want to, anything that the only limitation for this technology is temperature. And of course, pressure, right? It's too high of a pressure. So there's a lot of sweet spots available that we could explore. You know, being a small company, you tend to kind of first, you pick a few avenues and you're being successful and you scale from there. But the business model of this company, we set it to be a licensing company, because that's the fastest way to scale the technology and have a bigger impact, right? Like you find people that are in need of solution, you help them develop it, and then they can scale it faster.
Now you're looking for potential partners, customers, producers abroad?
Yeah, in fact, I was in Portugal a month ago. So the idea is to find, we've been approached by Techstars with Equinor. So the idea is to find companies that for which would be a good fit, and I think there's many of them. But I think we're also looking at people that are truly truly interested in sustainability, making an impact, and then the cost of this solution. Just to talk about on the business side really quickly, to retrofit any system, for example, you retrofit a muffler of a vehicle. Based on the material price, if you start scaling it, it's going to be around $50. If you look at the price of catalytic converter, price of electric car, for people that are limited, that are really like they want. So that's why I love this type of technology, because I see the opportunity of everybody being included. It's not something like hydrogen. You know, I talk to my family, other people, what do you know about hydrogen? Is it something practical for you? It's not, because it's such at a high level.
Mm-hmm.
And I think technologies, when biomimicry, because it's nature-based, that make it accessible to a large amount of people, I think that's a beautiful story, because it can enable all of us to start doing something for the environment, disregard the amount of money you make, where you're from, because it's more approachable.
That's very true. Everybody can contribute to the bigger whole.
Exactly. Yeah. And so that's, I think that's some type of technologies that I've been looking at lately also, is associated innovation with something that could also trigger a movement of people, because when we do things together, you create a better culture. And the climate problem is everybody's problem. It's not a few. It's just everybody should be able to have the tool to do a little something about it.
Yeah, that's true. That's why we are from the Biomimicry Switzerland organization so happy to have you here and talk about this and inspire others. So for the sake of time, I think we have to come to an end now.
Well, it was a pleasure to be there today. Thank you very much to you, Sonja, Edwin, and all the audience for being there today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. And to the audience, thank you for the questions. Thank you for the helpers from Switzerland. A special thank you to Edwin from my side. Helen, thank you for being our guest. And thanks for your interest in our work. If you wish to support the dissemination of biomimicry-inspired solutions and initiatives, you can donate. Or you can fill out the survey form. This really helps us in improving from one webinar to the next. And before we go, we are looking for new and interesting speakers. If you have something to share, or having someone in your community, or if you wish that we tackle a particular aspect of biomimicry, please get in touch with us. We are always looking for new perspectives and topics, and I hope we all see us again in November. I think Edwin put all the links in the chat. I think our aim is to spread the idea of biomimicry, and we want to do these webinars for free. So if anybody has some spare money, we would be happy also for little donations. And thanks for your time. And I wish all of you a good evening or a good day, depends where you are.